Everybody's talking at the comic spot. The comic spot. The comic spot. Everybody's talking at the comic spot. The comic spot.
Hi, Facebook people. It's me, Linda Marcus Smith, with all these Michigana interviews I've been doing. I know. And you're at home watching, and I appreciate that. You watch after the fact, rarely in the moment. Thank you so much for coming on to Comic Spot interview number 1003. Thank you for all the support. We're doing it. Well, these were all started so that people who go to comedy can find out who a comedian, entertainer is, to see if they even like them, to see if they want to support them. That's the whole point. And today on Comic Spot, we're taking a divergent step. Yes, we are. A huge step to the left. I have a fellow comedian here watching. He's going to throw in a question. I have a video to play, but I have a special guest for you. That's the whole reason. She wanted to come on and share some memories, discuss funny things, weird things, how you keep a marriage together when your husband's an entertainer around the world. Whatever she wants to say, she's going to say it. We're not going to stop her. And her name is Linda J. Hoffman. She is the wife, the widow of our beloved, infamous Bobby Rydell. Yes, the crooner from our days, baby boomers days, our heyday. She is the lady who landed his love and kept it going through all the craziness of show business. Oh my gosh, she must have stories. Let's go to her right now, you guys. But wait, there's more. One last little thing. We had a guest on here when Bobby came on, and the two of them, if you want to have the video, I can give it to you, Linda, but Bobby and Will Clifton were talking about going and doing comedy together. And unfortunately, Bobby didn't make it long enough for that to happen. But Will Clifton wanted to share something from his heart to you. So may I play that for you, Linda?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. I hope I'll send this to you after. So if audio and video isn't perfect, just go with it. Here we go.
Hey, Linda, this is Will C. I'm coming to you from the Atlanta International Airport. I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for allowing the interview with Bobby. And it was a pleasure to meet him and be able to do that interview with him. I know growing up, parents were always listening to Swing in School. That was kind of one of the biggest songs played in my house as a kid. And always been a big Bobby fan. And so when I got the opportunity to be able to be on Linda's interview with him, I jumped at the opportunity. Anyway, I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I know this was a rough year losing Bobby, but he's in our hearts, he's in our minds, and his music will live on forever. So take care.
That was Will Clifton from the Veterans of Comedy. And I'm a military veteran like Bobby was, and Bobby's father. And so that's the group I belong to. So Linda, we just want to welcome you to Comic Spot, make you feel right at home. What do you have to say about being the wife of the Bobby Rydell? You have a private life, you have a public life.
He was much different at home. He was very outgoing when he was out, but at home he liked to just be at home in his lounging clothes, watching sports. Music and sports, those were his two passions.
So who were his favorite singers, male and female, and who were his favorite sports teams?
Well, sports, of course, was Phillies and Eagles and the Flyers and the Sixers. I mean, Philadelphia all the way. His favorite singer, of course, was Frank Sinatra. And his favorite female singer was Edie Gourmet.
Oh, good taste. Absolutely.
And he was, he knew Steve Lawrence. So I don't know whether he knew Edie had died by the time I met Steve. because I'm his second wife. So we were married. We were together 15 years, married 13. I mean, I met Steve after Edie died, so I don't know whether Bobby met her. I have no idea about that, but she was his favorite singer. Steve and Edie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ziggy, do you have anything you would like to add or ask at this point? So I don't
Well,
forget to include you.
yeah, I mean, I remember Steve and Edie. I loved them. They were great. They were great. But I was just going to say that, my favorite song of Bobby Rydell's was "Forget Him." Like I was like 13 when that came out, and I had a crush on this girl in elementary school, and I could never say it or anything like that. But
Oh, of
whenever he
course
would sing,
not.
right, right. So whenever I would hear that song on the radio, I would think of her and say, if you're with somebody, forget him. I really love you. But I would never say it to her. I never spoke to her. She didn't know, except I invited her to my bar mitzvah. So maybe she knew something. But nothing ever came of it. But that's my big memory of Bobby. I love that song, and it's very meaningful for me. So whatever. Thank you for being so good to him in the years that you had together.
I had to
Yes.
keep him alive. He was always in the hospital.
Wow,
He
wow.
was in the hospital. I used to tease him that he only married me to have built-in health care, not knowing that it would actually come to pass, because he
Wow,
was in the hospital every year that we were married.
No way.
wow. Wow.
It got to be a joke. In January, I'd say, well, do you think we'll make it through a year without a hospital visit? Sometimes it was stupid stuff, like a nosebleed that wouldn't stop, or a finger infection, but sometimes it was big stuff too. But we never got through a full year without a hospital visit. He was a trooper, though. I mean, we'd laugh about it, and he'd wake me up in the middle of the night for something, and I'd say, "Oh, here we go." So I'd get him in the car or call the ambulance. But he always bounced back. He was back on stage 6 weeks after his heart surgery.
Wow.
That was an amazing heart surgery because the heart was donated from a young girl.
No, he had liver kidney transplant.
Oh, okay. My bad.
That's another adventure. That adventure was July 2012, liver kidney transplant. 8 months later, and he was on stage in 6 months, solo in Vegas. 8 months after that, which was March 2013, is when he had his open chest bypass and was back on stage in 6 weeks.
Wow. Wow.
He missed one show at that time.
Wow.
That the drive to get back on stage is what I feel is what made him recover so quickly.
Absolutely.
He couldn't wait to get back on stage. That was his life. He never did any other job. He never had, like, he didn't wait on tables to drive a cab. He started performing when he was 7.
With his dad in bars in Philly.
Right, correct. His father would take him to clubs where they had, big bands would play, but then there'd be intermission. And he would say to whoever the club owners, I guess, I wasn't around, that why don't you let my son perform? He does imitations and sings. And I'm sure they thought, oh, let's humor this old guy. We'll let his son get up. And little did they know that he actually was talented. When he died, I called a friend. She was his first wife's best friend. She was in their wedding party, but she had also gone to school with Bobby since kindergarten. And I called her to tell her, and she told me one of the things that she remembered about Bobby at recess. Most kids are playing ball or whatever they do. She said Bobby would be over in the corner. This is 7, 8 years old, with a group of kids around him, imitating people from TV. That was grade school.
My goodness sakes. And then he landed himself with Red Skelton.
Yeah, I think he was in his early 20s at that time.
My
And
God.
he was the only, from what Bobby told me, I'm just telling you what he's told me, that he was the only person that Red ever let take on a character. And that happened. They were backstage doing something before the show. And Bobby was talking to somebody, I don't know who, and he was imitating Red. And Red heard him. And he said to the writer of the skits, write that kid, write him into the script. And that's how we came along with, I think it was Zeke Clem's cousin, city cousin,
Yes.
Diddlehopper. That's how that came about, because Red heard him imitating Clem
Right.
Diddlehopper. And that's what they did. And he was on there a couple times.
Wow.
And he also was at the private, he went to Red's home in Palm Springs, I think it was, that he went to visit. Red took him with the family. And his wife told Bobby that he was one of the very few people from show business that ever came to the house, because Red kept things separate. There was business and then, friends.
Yes. Oh my.
Yeah, Bobby loved Red Skelton. As a matter of fact, one year for his birthday, Red was painted clowns. His father was a clown, and Red would paint. And I got him a Red Skelton painting for his birthday of the Clem Diddlehopper character.
Oh my God. Red Skelton had such a knack of tapping into your whole heart, making you cry and laugh.
Yes. Yeah, I remember watching him as a kid. I remember seeing Bobby as a kid. I didn't know who he was, but I remember that skit.
Well, let's go into how you met.
We were fixed up on a blind date. But prior to that, when I got divorced years ago, I got my own apartment, and my name was the same name as his fan club president. She had been a different, she married a Hoffman, but she had been his fan club president before she got married. So when I moved into my apartment as a single person, one of the first phone calls I got, this woman calls me and says, "Hi, is this Linda?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'd like to order the latest cassette." I said, I don't know what you're talking about." This is in the 80s. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "Well, aren't you Linda Hoffman?" Now I'm getting annoyed. I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, aren't you the president of the Bobby Rydell fan club?" I said, "No, I'm not. Isn't he dead?" Because I'm thinking Bobby Darin. And she said, no, he's not dead." I said, "Well, you got the wrong person. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to do with Bobby Rydell." And that was 1982. And through the years, she lived not far from me. We went to the same dry cleaners, dentist, jewelry store, general practitioner. I never met her at that point. We were crossing paths, but I knew she existed. So I finally was connected to her through the jewelry store. I went in one day to pick up a repair, and they gave me they pulled out the wrong jewelry. And I said, no, wrong one. I said, "Don't tell me it's going to happen here too." And the girl that was working there said, and I told her the story, and she said, "Oh, I know her. I went to high school with her." I said, "Well, can you give her my number and tell her to call me? Because I don't mind taking some information, because the calls weren't that frequent. Because remember, this is before the internet." I said, "But if she gives me her number, I will call her and give her, and she can call them back." And that's how I got even realizing who Bobby Rydell was. I mean, I was not a fan. I'm 11 years younger than him. I mean, I knew he was a singer, but I wasn't, I would never have gone to a concert. And then years later, we were fixed up by really a stranger. I didn't know her that well. I stopped in a store, Bath and Body Works, and I worked for his next door neighbor, who was a cardiologist. And I was leaving his office in Center City, Philadelphia. I stopped at this store because I had a coupon, and it was pouring rain. This girl and I were the only ones in there, the girl who worked there and me. And we started talking, and I knew a lot of parents of kids that she went to school with. She was about maybe 35 at the time. And I knew the parents. So then she said, "Oh, this is really weird." I said, "Oh, you want to hear a weird story?" And I told her my Bobby Rydell saga, because I had not met him at that point. I just had this whole story. And she said, "Oh my God." She said, "I know him. I'm going to tell him about you." I said, "He may know about me because I had his mother as a patient, but he may not. I mean, I don't know." So at that time, his wife had been gone 4 years, and they were always trying to fix him up with somebody. So she tells him, "I met this girl. I think you'd like her. And she's this, and her name is Linda Hoffman." He went, "That's my fan club president. She's married to the same guy forever." She said, no, this is the other Linda Hoffman." And he was like, "Really?" His mother hadn't told him. So that was on a Tuesday. He called me on Thursday, and it was like around October 7th or 8th in 2007. And we talked on the phone, and he said, well, I'm going out of town. I'll call you when I get back. I said, okay. So then I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I don't even know what this guy looks like. What have I got myself into? So thank God for the internet. So I went on the internet and I, looked up what he looked like. And then I listened to some of his songs, which I did remember, but they weren't the soundtrack to my life. But I did know the songs. I can remember dancing to them when I was about, I don't know, 8, before high school. And that's how we met. We were fixed up. I mean, he didn't even know me. I mean, he didn't even see me. He just called me on the phone.
Wow.
And that's how that happened. And our first date was Halloween with about 14 other people, because I rode with her because I didn't know him. I rode with her because she lived near me. And we met at a restaurant in South Philadelphia. There were all these people. And he
You
was
remember the
asking
name
me,
of the restaurant?
Tres Scalini. It's closed now. But I remember him asking me, we went outside for a cigarette, and he was asking me all about Medicare supplemental insurance and stuff like that. And I said, something's wrong with this picture. I mean, with the teen idol, and you're asking me about Medicare and supplemental insurance? Because I worked in medicine for 36 years. And that's how we met.
Oh my goodness sakes. What's it like being married to such a huge mega star? Everybody wants a piece of Bobby. It must have been like batting
I-
off girls.
didn't- I didn't let it, it didn't bother me. And we'd go play. When we weren't local, nobody bothered us when we went local. They'd say, hi, Bob, how are you? But after shows, there'd be all these people. And I remember leaving a show in Delaware, and we had to come downstairs from the dressing rooms upstairs, and they put you into the back of the theater, and then you walked out. I opened the door for us to get out, and it was like, oh my God, all these women were there. Now I got a hold of his hand, because if we get separated, forget it. So he goes, where are we going? I said, I'll just follow me. And I'm dragging him through the crowd. And all of a sudden, our arms start to get spread apart. And I'm looking at him like, where are you going? And he went, isn't this the way? The crowd was taking him like down another hallway. And if I didn't have a hold of his hand, he would have been swept away. But, we never got through a meal without, I hate to bother you, but can I have a picture? Mid-bite. So finally I'd say, how about this? Give me the camera out, because they'd say, get in the picture. I said, no, you don't want me. Give me the camera. You get in the picture. So they would go so we could finish eating. It would be crazy. But that's the way it is. I mean, I got used to it. They're not there to see me. They're there to see him. So I just was always, I'd get out of the way.
Well, there's a lot of military people that are going to see this, and a lot of comedians. And one thing they all have in common is that they're separated a lot. So what was that like, and what encouragement would you have looking back on years of being separated because of his career? When one spouse has a career that takes them away, how does the spouse at home make the marriage stay alive?
It never bothered me that he traveled. People would say, oh, it must be exciting. You travel with him. I'd say, no. Do you go to the office with your husband? I mean, the only time I would travel with them is Vegas. I'd go to Vegas because he'd be there 3 days. I'd go to see other shows. I've seen him. I'd go see other people. And then I'd meet him afterwards. I'd come back to wherever he was, and we'd have dinner. It's not as glamorous as people think. You're usually going through the kitchen, out past the garbage cans. I mean, it's not real. You take all the back hallways, which are not nice. They're pipes and all kinds of stuff. So it was like, you go do your thing. And then I would go visit friends, or I'd go to my summer house that I grew up at. I just did my own thing when he went away, which was kind of nice because it's boring on the road. It's very boring. It's not my job. So what am I supposed to do? I'm not even in music. So, I mean, it was great. Plus, I think you need a break sometimes because remember when he was home, he was home. I mean, he was here all the time, and he would get up in the morning and he'd go from the bed and then he'd sit on the couch and watch TV for a while, and he'd say, "Oh boy, I'm tired." I'd say, "What? What are you tired from? All you do is get up." Because I did everything because he traveled, so I took care of everything.
You're hilarious. You've never thought of comedy?
No, no, I was in medicine for all my life.
Ziggy's
But-
has the same scenario that you're speaking of with his wife. She prefers to, like, when he's out performing, right? Ziggy, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, I used to be glad to put him on a plane.
Well, my wife is afraid I'm going to get lost all the time. So whenever I perform, she feels like she has to go with me. She feels I'll never come home or something, or I'll get killed. Even though she hates my comedy, she doesn't want to see me perform at all. But she feels she has to go with me just to make sure I get back home.
When he
So,
performed
she's
locally,
not
I
happy
always
with that.
went
She's not
because I
happy.
drove. But when he was anywhere he went on a plane, unless it was Vegas or Australia, he went by himself. I just put him on the plane. Okay, see you. Call me later, and then I would go to do my thing, which would
So-
be sometimes just come home and just stay in the house.
So did you have a large circle of gal friends you could trust, or could you never trust anybody?
No, if I never worried about that because you can't control that. That's out of your control. So my attitude was, you don't have to leave town to do anything. You can do things at home too. No, I mean, don't forget, I was 55 when I married him. So I had a life before. So I had a lot of friends. I would go up north to my hometown, or I would go out to dinner with friends. I mean, I had plenty to keep me busy. I never ran out of things to do.
What kind of things do you like to do when you were not busy being Bobby's wife?
I'm always up. As soon as it gets warm, I'm outside. In the summer, I'm at the lake. I'm out in the kayak a lot. Things like that. Outdoor. I like to be outside.
Very lovely.
I don't like to
Where-
cook. He didn't
No.
marry me for my cooking, trust me. I mean, we wouldn't starve, but I don't like to cook.
I hate to cook. I hate it.
It's a thankless
I'm half-
job.
I'm half Jewish. I'm 71. I finally figured out how to keep a kosher kitchen. I stay out.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to do it. No,
Oh
I
my
kept
God.
busy. I mean, because Bobby would say to me, I'd be in and out the door. I'd be doing things, trimming trees, hauling all kinds of bushes. And he'd say, "What are you doing out there? They have people we can hire to do that." I'd say, "I like to be outside and I can't just sit there. So I do things."
That's great. I would rather be outside doing that kind of stuff than inside.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
You spend 2 hours cooking a meal and it's over in a half an hour, and then you have to clean up all the stuff and it's gone.
You just capsulized it right there. That's exactly why I hate it.
Yeah. But it was,
What's
it's
so
funny.
funny? Go ahead, Linda.
In fact, I put this on my Facebook after this happened. It was a number of years ago. When we would get in bed, I'm not a big TV watcher at all. So I'd listen to videos or I'd be reading. Well, one night, he's listening to YouTubes, and he would listen to Carol Burnett shows and stuff like that. So we go to sleep. I'm sound asleep, and he had been listening to Carol Burnett YouTubes. This is 2:00 in the morning. All of a sudden, he screams, "Harvey Korman!" And he wakes me up, and I said, "Bobby, what was that all about?" He goes, What are you talking about?" I said, "You just woke me up screaming Harvey Korman." He goes, "Oh, I must have been thinking about the thing I was listening to before I went to sleep." So the next day on Facebook, I said, "Well, now Harvey Korman has entered my married life." And I went on to describe what Bobby had done. I mean, like, just crazy things, because he'd set them in his head, he'd see something and he'd wake me up, or he'd wake up singing a song that he'd wake me up because the bed would be shaking and his feet would be, moving. And I'd be poking him. What's wrong? What are you doing? He goes, What? He had a very active dream world, I guess. Much more active than mine.
You had to pour water on his dreams when they woke you up. You had to put the sizzle out.
Unbelievable.
What
But,
are what are some of his greatest memories on the road that he'd come home and tell you?
Oh God, I'm trying to think. There were always stories when he came home. This is one adventure. I'm at this is August now. He's out in Oregon. I'm at the lake house, which is 2 hours north of Philly. And he calls me. Well, it was probably 3 o'clock at my time. So it was, what is it, 12 their time? And he goes, I think I did something. I said, what are you talking about? Like, explain to me what you want. And what are you trying to say? He said, well, I fell out in the parking lot. This was one of his medical adventures. This was maybe 2010. I said, well, tell me what happened. So he tells me what happened. I said, well, lift your arm. Can you do this? Can you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And he says, no. I said, Bobby, I can't help you. I'm 3,000 miles away. You better go to the hospital. I think you broke your shoulder. You broke your upper arm. I'm not sure, but you better go to the hospital. He did. He broke he was determined to go back to the hotel room, and it was him, Frankie. I don't know if Fabian was there, but they were in a restaurant. But to get to the hotel rooms, you had to walk across the parking lot to get to where the rooms were. And Bobby was stubborn, and he said, I'm going to leave. And Frank said, well, why don't you wait till it stops raining? Because at the time that they went in, it was raining. Well, it changed to hail. So he goes to go back to his room, hits the hail. It's like being on golf balls. He flipped up in the air and fell down and broke his upper arm, the top of his humerus. Now he can't get up. He's laying on the ground. Frankie comes out, doesn't realize it's Bobby. Probably thought he was an old drunk on the ground. He starts to walk by him, and Bobby says, Frank. And he goes, Bobby, is that you? I can't get up. In fact, I gave the leather jacket to one of the grandkids that the whole shoulder was scratched, like all, shredded. Still wearable, but it looked distressed now. He ended up going to the hospital. They had to immobilize him. Gets back to the hotel. Now they have another show the next night. Now, how's he going to perform? He can't get dressed. He can't even zip his pants, but he goes on stage and he does 2 songs with them in a sling with a baseball hat in sweatpants, just to show that he was alive. And then Fabian had to put him. Fabe called me and I said, just jam all the clothes in the suitcase. Just do whatever you have to do just to make it less stuff to carry. He flew with Bobby, and this was a ride, a 2-hour ride from the casino. It was an Indian casino to the first airport. Then they flew together, I think, to Texas or Arizona, and then they took respective flights. So Fabian was with him, had to get him dressed in the morning, get him all zipped up and everything. And that's the one adventure. So then in the meantime, I'm on the phone with the doctor telling him what happened. He came home on Sunday. I had him at the hospital Monday morning, and he had surgery Monday afternoon. He had a big metal plate put in his arm because this bone was up here. He broke off the head, and it rolled up into here. So now he comes now he's like this forever, he's strapped in because he had to be immobilized. That was one adventure. There was always an adventure, some sort of medical adventure. Another time,
was he accident prone in your mind?
Oh yeah, well, in 2018, and I had told him, Bobby, don't walk around the house. We had all hardwood floors. Don't walk around the house in your socks. Either put your shoes on or go barefoot because the floors are too slippery. What do I know? I go out. I come home. It's Good Friday. It's the first nice day we've had in a long time after the winter. And I hear him screaming as the garage door opens. He's yelling, Linda! I'm thinking, oh God, what happened now? I walk in the door. He's on the floor, and I could tell by the position of his leg. This was not good. But I didn't want to tell him that. Now I have groceries in my arms. So I looked at him. This is how used to things I was. I looked at him and I said, you're not bleeding. You're not going to die. Give me 15 minutes. I went to the kitchen, put the food away, called the ambulance. Ambulance comes. They can't get to him where he is. They have to come in through the patio door with the stretcher because he can't get up. He broke his femur. He broke the femur, the upper leg bone in his right leg, which is the same place where his hip was replaced. So off he goes. And I said to them, I'll be right behind you. I've got to do some things here. So then I meet him at the emergency room. They can't do anything because it's trauma. So then he has to be shipped to another hospital downtown because it was trauma based. And he had to have a whole new hip replacement put in because it got ruined when he fell and broke his femur, all because he wanted pickles in the kitchen. When I walked in, he was on the floor. His head was on the step. He had the plate of pickles next to him on the paper plate on the step. That he had picked them up because they went flying. So when I went to see him in the hospital, I took him a big blow up pickle. It was a pool toy, but I bought it. It was a big blow up pickle. I mean, it was just crazy stuff.
Let's fast forward to the surgery where the young girl passed away and donated a body part that kept Bobby alive.
That was in July. The shoulder was in 2010. The transplant was July 2012. And he got a liver and kidney from a 21-year-old girl who had been hit by a car. And, you know, this did for months prior to this. Now he was 3 days a week. It was he was going for dialysis. And the other day, either Tuesday or Thursday, he had to go and they would tap his stomach because he was so distended with fluid. And that had to be done once a week. So every day I was busy doing medical stuff with him. And when he first went on dialysis, I guess it was maybe the third time, you know, I'd go take him in and then I was free for 5 hours. So I pick him up and he goes, guess what? We can do this at home. You can do this at home. I said, oh, take that thought right out of your mind. That's not happening. I said, I can't just plug you in and leave. I've got to be there to monitor the you know, the chart, the dials and everything. And I said, no, you're going to the dialysis center because it gives me 3 days a week that I don't have to worry about you. Because if something goes wrong, you're going right across the driveway to the hospital. So I said, that's not happening. Take that right out of your mind. You're not getting this done at home. So that was my life. And then he got the transplants. And at that point, because they said he might be in the hospital a month. So I thought he was really doing great. He didn't have any problems. He was really making progress. So I thought, okay, my plan was to go. It was a Thursday. I was going to go down there. Then I was going to go to the lake for about 5 days because I knew I'd have a lot of work when he got home. I go in and the doctor came in, the surgeon came in, he's from Italy. And he says, well, Bob, I think you go home in 3-4 days. I said, what? Can't you keep him for another week? I need a break. He said, no, he can go home. So he came home.
You're
and
hilarious.
we were at the lake Labor Day weekend. We did get to Labor Day weekend at the lake.
Wow. I know when he came on my show, he surprised me because I had searched the internet for facts about Bobby Rydell because he was like a teen idol to me. I mean, he was a teen idol in my day, but I never knew much about him. I knew his songs, didn't know about him. And I went searching and I got a lot of facts, but when I came on, I told him that I wanted to acknowledge his father for being in the military, and Bobby surprised me on the air that he was in the military too. I started bawling. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was very proud of his. I think he was done with the reserves when he went to Vietnam. I'm not quite sure what the timeline is, but I know he went to places in Vietnam that Bob Hope never went. Like little tiny, like he performed one for 15 Marines. Like little tiny places where they didn't take Bob Hope. And he really was proud of that he went and did his thing to entertain the troops. Because there were sometimes small audiences, really small.
Did he have a special memory of anybody he met that touched his heart? In those?
Not that he mentioned to me. I mean, if he did, he would have mentioned it to you.
Yeah, and I forgot to ask him that question. Yeah,
but nobody that I can remember anyway. But
sorry.
He was telling me he was doing a show one time on a sort of tennis court they had rigged up, and he heard like missiles, I guess. And like, he was like, oh my God. And then one guy said, don't worry, Bob, it's outgoing. It wasn't incoming, it was outgoing.
My gosh. And he also traveled with the other entertainers, Fabian and Paulenka.
No, I don't think it was them. I know he went over there with Georgie Woods, who was a DJ from Philly. I don't know who else traveled with him. A couple go-go girls that they had for the guys. I don't know who else was on the tour. I have
Then
no idea.
later in his life, didn't he entertain musically here in the state?
Oh, he did with Frankie and Fabian, the Golden Boys.
Frankie and Fabian.
Oh.
Yeah, the Golden
That-
Boys.
That show started in 1985. And I don't know if it's still going, but it was going up until the day Bobby died. I mean, they had bookings because, I mean, he wasn't expected to die because he was already talking about, he had a show coming up in June, a solo show in Atlantic City. And prior to that, there were some Golden Boy dates. And he was doing really great. I mean, he just had to build his strength up, but then he got pneumonia and that was it. You know, a lot of people die from pneumonia. It's more common than you think. And I don't mean COVID, I mean just pneumonia.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know he was getting ready to come here to Las Vegas, and I was so looking to get to meet him, actually meet him.
Yep, that was on the schedule.
Wow.
If Tony Orlando called me a couple days after, well, before Bobby died, but he called me after Bobby died, and I was just going, because I had him booked for doctor's appointments all the way to November, follow-up appointments, all these things. And I was sitting at the table going, I threw his calendar away and I was going through my date book, whiting out all these things. And Tony called me and I said, oh my God, I feel like I've been laid off. My calendar's empty. I feel like I should get unemployment because I was so busy taking care of him with appointments. He was home for in between a hospital visit. He was home a week. I had him at 2 doctor's appointments that week. I mean, it was just, you got to keep somebody alive. So you have to keep the appointments going. And, you know, it was not expected that he was going to die. I mean, he didn't have anything that was like a long-term illness. It just, in pneumonia. I mean, his pulse ox went down really low and he ended up in the hospital, and that was Friday. He died Tuesday.
So when
Which
he
is
came,
a blessing. It was a blessing that he went so quick.
how so?
If he didn't, well, his kidney started to fail because he was so sick. And I don't know if he ever would have performed again. And if he couldn't perform, life wouldn't be worth living.
Oh,
So I'm glad it just was, it wasn't a long weeks and weeks and weeks. And he didn't suffer. I mean, he was with it. He was totally with it. He wasn't in a coma or anything. He was with it, but he just couldn't breathe.
so what are some touching things you've gotten in the mail or by text or Facebook message or whatever? What's the most touching little message you've gotten from a fan? Or
I've got the day he died at 2:45. I got home at 4, and my cell, his cell, and our landline, everything was filled with voicemails. I had 157 emails. I don't even know how many text messages. I'm still writing thank you notes. And half of them, I don't even know what they say because they're in different languages. And I can't send them thank you notes, but I don't think he realized how much he was part of many people's life, the soundtrack to their life. And it was all these years. It wasn't that he just had it then. They would come to the shows, the current shows. So he was with them from the time they started dating their husband or wife, and they got married and had kids and grandkids. And now here they are in their 70s and 80s going to the Golden Boys show, taking a trip down memory lane. So many of them, they felt like that he was part of their life, like the family almost. It was really strange. I mean, it's very hard to comprehend. And it's very hard as the spouse, because I have not looked at any video tributes or anything. I can look at stuff from when he's young, because I don't identify with that Bobby, like when he's like under 60 or under 55. But anything more current, I don't watch
Yeah.
or listen to. I will eventually. I save them. I have a file I save them in, but I don't listen to them. The only thing I get regularly is his ringtone. My ringtone on my phone is Volare. But I
Oh,
associate that with my phone. I don't associate that with him, if you know what I mean. But I can't watch some of these things.
what was your favorite song? Was it Volare?
Oh, I have to think about that. Probably Volare or Kissin' Time, which is one of his gold records. I mean, I didn't know a lot of the songs he did. I mean, I still don't know them. That wasn't my mission to learn his catalog. I was too busy taking care of him.
Oh my gosh. So when he came on my show the first time, he came on twice, and then Steve Marshall was going to show up, but the link might not have worked. I think he's trying to get a hold of me. Steve Marshall had a show and had Bobby on that. But the very first time I ran into Bobby was when I was at an Italian restaurant in the Inland Empire of California in Menifee. I was walking through an Italian. Here's Stephen. So I'm going through this. I'll wait to enter him in for 1 second. I'm going through this Italian restaurant. Somebody's singing an Italian song. I don't know what it was, because actually Volare wasn't my favorite song anyway. It was Forget Him. So that, you know, when you've got real talent going on, and I was like, whoa, and it said Bobby Rydell, and I'm like, Bobby Rydell. So I got home and I messaged him somehow, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, who knows. And he wrote back. And so we stayed friends on there. And then I started doing these Meshuggah interviews. and I asked him if I could interview him. And he said yes. So yeah.
Oh, I had him. I would set him all through COVID. I would set him up at the kitchen table, and I'd get the links, and I'd get everything set up because he didn't know how to do that. And then I usually was either in the kitchen, not that anybody could see me, or I was in another room to keep the dog from barking.
And you had a dog that you kept from barking in the other room. Was your dog a big white dog?
No, she's a mutt. I got her on Craigslist. For Bobby. Bobby always wanted a dog, and he could never have a dog. So I said, I'm not going to go through a puppy, but I'll get a dog. So I got her on Craigslist. She was about 2. Now she's 14.
Oh, well, I want to introduce you to somebody who's quite the achiever in the comedy community around the world, and quite a list of accomplishments as an actor, producer, director, and a comedian. Stephen is here. Stephen, excuse me. Stephen, introduce yourself. I got a tickle in my throat, please.
Well,
Say hello.
I am very lucky. I'm Steve Marshall. I'm finding it so funny just to listen to you because I'm from Brooklyn. Bobby was from Philadelphia, and you are so much like my girlfriend. With if you think I'm hanging around 2 weeks, and if you think, well, I'm going to take over a dog, all right, we're not getting a puppy. You know what I mean? You are so authentic. I feel like I'm married to you.
Don't you love her? She's such a blessing to get to know.
Well, it's Bobby. I had Bobby on my little show here, and he came on with a baseball cap. He's from Philadelphia. I'm from Brooklyn. So down to earth for a guy who could act, sing. You know what I mean? He understood music. The first memory I have of Bobby from that show is he said to me, I would always tell everybody who wrote the song before I sang it. He said, I learned that from Mr. Sinatra. And that really hit me so hard that he would always give credit, Bobby said, to the songwriter. And so I see this gentleman who's a legitimate star, a legitimate icon, and he's so down to earth with the baseball cap.
Oh, yeah.
And I see these people today that are building themselves up on social media. They have nothing, right? Bobby,
know.
right? Bobby was a legitimate star, movie star, singing sensation, icon. And when you meet him, I could see the two of you in ShopRite and you going, no, 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 not that orange juice, this orange juice.
You know, it's funny because we moved 3 years ago from the big house he bought when he was 21, and we moved to a townhome community because the bedroom's on the first floor. The extra ones are upstairs, but there's a restaurant right next door called Phil's Tavern. So Bobby would, I mean, he can't be with me all the time. Please, we'd kill each other. So he would go out for lunch, you know, once every day, go over there for lunch. And he'd sit around with the guys and talk sports with his baseball hat. Many of the people that came in there didn't know who he was because you didn't know who he was. I mean, he had a baseball hat on. And if he took his hat off, he didn't have his hairpiece on, so he didn't look, you wouldn't know him anyway. He was in Florida. It was after his transplants. And after they did the transplants, they took pictures in the hospital with the two surgeons on either side, the one who put the kidney in, the one who put the liver in. So they took a picture. Bobby's in the hospital gown and he doesn't have his hairpiece on, but the doctor's here, another doctor there. And it came up on Facebook. I don't even know how it got on the web. But anyway, he's in Florida doing a gig afterwards. And this lady comes up to him and says, oh, Mr. Rydell, you know, such all your surgeries. I'm so glad you survived. And but can I ask you a personal question? He said, sure. She goes, I didn't know they shaved your head to do transplant surgery.
Right.
He tells me this in the car when I pick him up at the airport. I said, what did you do? He said, I just said, hun, this is a hairpiece. No, it's not. And he said, yeah, it is. Do you want me to take it off? She said, oh my God. Oh, it can't be a hairpiece. You don't know how many people would write into Facebook or his website and say, went to your concert this weekend and oh, you still have a gorgeous head of hair. And unfortunately, my husband lost his years ago. And I'd read it to him and I'd say, little do they know it's in a box on the dresser.
Why are you two guys so down to earth? When I meet so many people that are nowhere near, you know what I'm getting at. What the hell is going on with the two of you that you're so down to earth and that it seems that fame didn't change you guys?
Well, in my case, I mean, I had lived my life. I was 55 when I met Bobby. So there weren't many things you could impress me with at that point. I'd watch people die. I'd watch people be put back together, coming in the emergency room. We all put our pants on the same way. And we all sit down on the toilet every day the same way. So, I mean, that really puts you down to basics.
Do you think that's what,
It doesn't matter how famous you are.
do you think that's why, because I'm a Brooklyn guy and my girlfriend's a Queens girl. And if you heard the two of us talk, I mean, you could move in with us right now.
I'm up for adoption, you know.
She is so unimpressed with me sometimes. Would Bobby, because all entertainers come home after every gig, big or small, did Bobby come home and say, oh, I got to tell you how it went? And did you say, please, I have to go to sleep?
Oh, yeah. There were times he'd want to, you know, because he's all wound up. And especially if I was in Vegas with him and he'd be like, oh, what about this? And I said, can't you tell me this in the morning? It's still going to be, you could still tell me this in the morning, really. I mean, when we first got married, I had lived alone for many years. And of course, you know, you got to remember he was a star when he was young. So he didn't really know how to do much at all. And he didn't have to do much because his mother made sure that his shoes were shined and the paper was there, the coffee was poured. That's not with me. So when we first got married, I would say to him, look, you know how to make the coffee? I got him the Keurig, so it was really simple. And he'd make something to eat. I'd say, look, you don't have to do the dishwasher. You don't have to wash the dishes. I said, but please run water into the dishes because it turns to cement. You don't. And it makes it harder for me to clean the dishes. And then we had an argument one night and I said, I don't care what happened before with anybody else. I said, you know, it's only you and me. There's no maid in this house. It's you and me. So You put your clothes in the dirty clothes. You do this. And he was like, okay. And he never questioned me. I mean, nobody ever asked him to do anything. All you have to do is ask him. When we got the dog, this is the best. I used to have to remind him, Bobby, now I'm going to go do errands. Before you go out, take the dog out. Okay. So I'd get home and say, did you take, oh yeah, she peed or pooped or whatever the story was. So the first time I came home, and we had 2 dogs in the beginning. And this is when we only had the one. And I said, did you take Ringo out? Yep, I took him out. Did he poop and pee? Yes, he did. I marked it for you. I said, what? He said, I marked it for you. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I put a tissue out there in the yard. I said, oh, no. I'm not the pooper picker upper. When you walk him, you pick it up. When I walk him, I pick it up. I don't know how. I said, come with me. And I dragged him out to the garage. I had a little thing there with the bags. I said, you pull the bag out, wet your finger, open the bag, put your hand in. I have to pick it up with my hand. I said, the bag is over your hand. You just pick it up and invert it and tie it off. Okay. I mean, he did it, but he did. Yeah, he marked the backyard. There were white tissues in 3 places in the backyard.
I think he might have liked that though, because I think to come from Philadelphia and be a regular like street guy, you know, and be able to walk the streets, and then to have all these people that are so full, you know, there are people that are fawning over you and they're kind of fake.
Yeah.
I think he was very attracted to the realness of you. You know what I mean? There's a reality about you that I think he was very attracted
Well, you
to.
know what I said to him one time? I said, you may be a star out there, but in here, it's just you and me. So you're not the star. You're my partner. No special treatment here. You got to help me. It's only the 2 of us. What you get
God,
out there,
I'm so frightened of you right now. I'm thinking of going into the kitchen and running water through the dishes. I want to thank you for having me on. Linda, you have been really asking great questions.
Thank you.
And I
Steve
do want to
Marshall,
say,
Steve Marshall, don't you think she would make a fabulous comedian?
first of all, I don't know if the comedy world can handle how honest she is because
not today. Forget
today's
it.
comedy world, everyone is trying to be something they're not, and you are so authentic. Can I tell you something? Your husband touched so many people. There's a guy watching now, John, and he's just in love. And people, it wasn't just the singing and it wasn't just the acting. We felt like we all knew him. Like, I tell you the truth, I got to get off. When I get off, I'm going to go to my girlfriend and tell her we got to send her flowers. I feel like you're a relative. You get what I'm saying? You talk to us. And Linda, seriously, this is a great interview because you're all dolled up, but you're asking.
I'm not. I just came home from getting a massage. This is my sweatshirt. I threw a scarf on.
Yeah, but look at Linda Marcus Smith. All right, she looks like Marilyn
Monroe. She just came from a black tie. She must have just. I bet you she had that on last night at a black tie.
She slept in it. But seriously, Bobby did something. You know, you hear people sing and you hear the song, but somehow with Bobby, he touched all our hearts. And I remember after my show, everybody was blown away. We absolutely fell in love with him again. I just want to say thanks for letting me come on, Linda. You're unbelievable. But both of you, what a refreshing moment to hear somebody who's real.
Thank you. And Steve Marshall, you also know Ziggy Susser down there. I didn't say his name to
Ziggy, how are you, Ziggy, my friend? Ziggy.
Hi.
But
Hi, Steve.
Merry Christmas. I still say Merry Christmas, even though I'm Jewish. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and thank you for sharing another moment with the Rydell family. And God bless you all. Bye,
God
guys.
bless you, Steve.
Bye, Steve.
I'm going to keep
Steve.
watching, but I have to keep watching, but I don't have my pants on. I have to get. So please take me off the screen. I got to put my pants on. Isn't that another thing, though? Isn't that another thing with singers like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Bobby? You don't put your pants on till right before you go on stage, so you don't get rid of the crease. Is that true?
Bobby wouldn't put his pants on till the very. I mean, he would take his clothes from the hotel to the venue and get dressed at the venue so he wouldn't be wrinkled.
Right. And you weren't supposed to. You put your whatever, not the sport coat, the top of your suit, your tie, your shirt, your boxer shorts, whatever you're wearing, but you don't put those pants on
You know how I met Peter Noon? We went to see him at a show in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He was opening for Tommy James and the Shondells. And there's the green room that they put you in. So we were up, and Bobby had performed there many times. So we're in the room, and Tommy comes in, and I know his manager, Carol DeBro. And here comes Peter Noon. He comes running in the room in his boxer shorts and his shirt and tie, but his boxer shorts with his socks and shoes. That's what Peter Noon was wearing when I met him. Now, Bobby had already met him. This is the first time I met him. I was like, oh, well, this is refreshing. I feel like I'm back at work at the hospital, because everybody's all undressed at the hospital. I always tell people, close the gown. Let's put the gown closed for you. But yeah, they don't want to get wrinkled. Although they get wrinkled in 5 minutes when they're on stage, because they're up and down off a stool or running
Yeah,
around.
but it's like a football player. You want to feel, you're going to get all bloody, but you want to feel fresh, and you want to put your mind in a certain place. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Linda. If you just turn me off, because I'll be walking around the house nude.
Thank you for coming
So
on,
nice
Steve
meeting you.
Marshall.
Well, you're
Thanks, Steve.
fantastic. Both of you. Mwah. Happy holidays.
Bye, Steve Marshall.
Bye, sweetheart. And I'm going to still listen.
Okay. Well, we'll have to behave. We can't diss him when he's listening. That'll be another episode.
You can misbehave. You can talk behind my back.
Oh my gosh, where do we go from there? Isn't he fabulous?
It's funny.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when Bobby came on my show, I was talking with him, and I realized, because he told me he had been in the military and he had done military comedy. He was in the Army for a bit. And I told him that the song that meant so much to me was Forget Him, because I had a boyfriend who basically ghosted me before we knew what ghosting was. That's how old I am. And
Well, and wasn't the old term that he dumped you? Now it's ghost.
we know what it is, don't change it on us. And so I told that to Bobby, that was my favorite song, that got me through a very hard time. And Bobby started singing that song right to me during that interview. I couldn't believe it. Was he always that benevolent?
He didn't sing around the house very much, unless he was trying, like if he was having a new chart written for a new song, and then he'd be going over it. But he didn't like belt songs out. He'd be just like in his head. Thank God, or God, that would have driven me nuts.
Oh my gosh.
People would say to me, does he sing to you at home? I'd say, no, he doesn't. He doesn't sing to me at home.
What was the funniest thing you and him ever experienced?
I forget where we were. I think it was the Poconos. It was after a show, and we went back to the hotel, and it was really strange because the tub, which wasn't your normal bathtub, it was square and very square. It was like a hot tub, but so we decided we'd do the hot tub, and we put in bubble bath. Well, the bubbles, they're everywhere, and I'm screaming at him, turn the water off, turn the jets off. The bubbles are coming up over the side of the tub. It's very slippery. He's not good on his feet. I am, but I wasn't, because there was so much stuff. I'm slipping all over the place, trying to get the towels to prevent the bubbles from going onto the rug, because it was, tile around the edge of it. We were laughing so hard. I mean, we ended up having to take a shower in the regular shower, because it was bubbles and it was sticky and it was slippery. And I was like, oh my God, what have we done? And we weren't kids. This was, I don't know, he was 62, I was 57, or I mean, maybe he's older than me. If I was 57, he would have been 69. It was before he had his broken leg the second time, because he was pretty good on his feet till then, but it was a circus. It was just a circus. Because I was all getting out of the tub, so I'm just stay in the tub, I'll get out. So I get out and I slip off the edge. It was crazy.
It's hilarious. It's such a great picture of our Bobby. You're painting a picture. I know you have your private Bobby that's separate from the public Bobby and you have your
Oh, yeah, he was-
private grief you've had to go through to get to where you can even be funny about this. Like at first, I'm sure you couldn't verbalize some of the stuff.
No, because, losing your spouse is different than losing somebody that you're a fan of. Not that you don't feel grief in some way, but it's much different, much different.
Yeah.
In fact, I was in the hospital twice this summer, and I said to the doctor when I went for my follow-up, I said, well, I'll tell you, having a pain, I had this pain for weeks, and I said, that certainly puts a damper on grief. I mean, you don't have much time to worry about grief when you've got this severe pain. That's all I want to do is get rid of the pain. But what are you going to do? I mean, I'm not the first widow. I won't be the last. I'm lucky that he didn't suffer, that he was, in a nursing home for years. I mean, that would have been horrible, horrible. He did what he loved up almost to the day he died. 2 weeks before he died, he was telling me he wanted to get a couple more songs that he was going to put into his solo show in June. So, he was looking forward to the future. But it was funny, back in November, and neither one of us were sick. I mean, I was standing in the kitchen, and where the sink is, I could see into the den. And he was lying on the couch in the den, and I'm doing dishes. And he said, hon, I'm going to die before you. You'll get remarried, won't you? And I went like this. Are you out of your mind? I'm done. I am finished. I'm not taking care of anybody else. He said, it's been that bad? I said, well, I'm not saying it's bad, but I don't want to do it again. I don't want to do it again. I said, I'm going to tell you I won't date and I won't have fun. But I said, no, I'm not doing this again. And he just kind of laughed. I mean, because I said, I calculated one time. I worked for 36 years. And I've calculated a 40-hour week. I didn't even add in overtime or extra jobs, just 40 hours. And then I calculated 24 hours a day from the time I got married to him. I put more hours into him after we got married than I did in my whole career, medically, to take care of him. And I didn't get paid, or I didn't get overtime, and I couldn't clock out either.
Oh, all I see is, I just see comedy. You're hilarious.
We had a lot of laughs, even in the middle of some really, difficult times medically. But I knew what was going on medically, and I never got him. If I didn't, maybe I would have gotten him upset. But I used to always say to him, don't worry, this is fine. And he woke me up. This was a year ago. He woke me up in the middle of the night. It's bitter cold. It's January. And he hits me, Lynn, wake up. I said, what? He goes, I have a nosebleed. I said, okay. And I get out of bed and I turn the lights on. Nosebleed. Looked like somebody had been massacred next to me. So I said, how long has this been going on? He said, well, I tried to stop it. It's been a couple hours. Now I get the ice and put your head back, pinch your nose. I'm going through all this. And finally, after 3 hours, I said, Bobby, I can't get it to stop. We've got to go to the hospital. Take him to the hospital. Now I couldn't go in with them. I checked him in, and that was it because of this COVID business. I'm sitting in the parking lot. It's 10 degrees. I'm in the parking lot. I got the phone going. I'm on Facebook. I'm looking at YouTube, just wasting time communicating via text message with him. They couldn't get it to stop. He calls me on the phone. He goes, well, they're sending me to Jefferson because they can't stop it. I said, okay, call me when you get there. I'm going home because I couldn't go with him. Call me when you get there. That was on a Tuesday morning. He got out of the hospital Sunday. They operated on Saturday because nobody could get the blood to stop, to stop the bleeding. I said, you can't even have a nosebleed that turns into a big production. Never had a nosebleed at all. First time and last time. But everything turned into a big deal. He goes for a finger infection. I said, you better go up the corner to the Doc in the Box, those little clinics. And I said, they'll give you maybe a shot or some pills. I said, you're getting an infection in that finger. We had just come home from New York the day before from him doing Gilbert Gottfried's show. So he goes up, he calls me, he goes, I'm on my way to the hospital. I said, what happened now? He said, the doctor said it's too infected. I have to go to the emergency. I said, okay, call me when you get to the emergency room. Because I had the dogs. I couldn't keep leaving. I had to wait to see what was going on. And he calls me, he goes, I'm being admitted. They're going to operate on the finger. I said, oh my God. I mean, everything turned into a hospital stay. We had a joke that he had frequent flyer miles at Jefferson Hospital. They had a billboard out that they were looking for Bobby Rydell. He hadn't been there for a while. It was insane. But we were able to joke about it because really the only life and death one was the transplant. The rest of it was stupid shit. I mean, he had a rib removed because after his transplants, he complained when he would sing, it would hurt. And I told the doctors right away, just take the rib out. They do this for women all the time, to take it out. It was a floating rib. It doesn't do anything. A year later, we finally got to a doctor. He said, I agree with you. We'll take it out. They took a piece of rib like this big, just the part that was riding up underneath the other rib that was hurting him. But it took a year to get that accomplished. It was
That
just
is stupid to wait a year.
We would go to a new doctor and he'd say, they have your chart, but they want to hear it. They'd say, well, now tell me your history. I said, how about if you start with what he doesn't have? It's a shorter list. Because I could go on for hours where it's easier to say he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, he doesn't have this, but he has everything else. But no, it was quite a ride. Even
You bring out the funny in me. I'm telling you, you're so, like Steve Marshall said, you are so down to earth and authentic.
No other way to be, really.
Yeah, and you kind of are a natural ranter.
Oh yeah, because when I would start ranting, Bobby would be like, he'd say to the dogs, "Here she goes," because I'd be like, I'd be and this and that and that and he'd say, "What do you?" And he'd say, Bella and Ringo were the dogs. He'd say, "Ringo, Bella, listen to her. Just listen to her."
Oh my gosh. So where does Linda Hoffman go from here?
Well, my new career is to keep his legacy alive. That's my new job. He's not here, so I've got to do it. Make sure that his music stays out there. He did, and this really was a surprise because we didn't expect him to die. Back in December, about a year ago, a little bit more, there's a young kid named Tommy C. And he sings at a restaurant in Wildwood. And he's done a couple, you can look him up on YouTube. And
what's his last name?
It's The Voice of Tribute is his webpage. The Voice of Tribute, Tommy C. And he and his manager came to our house for dinner and they were talking and Bobby really liked the kid. He liked the kid. He's 25, I think. And so they were talking about doing a song, getting together and doing a couple duets. So they went into the studio and they did Sway. It's not the disco version and not Bobby's version. It's more of a Latin version. And Bobby laid down the vocals, figuring they could always go back again. It was just the first shot. And they did a couple other songs. I'm not quite sure which ones because that went to the bottom of my list when he started to get sick. But it's out there. You can find it. And it's Bobby's last live recording. The video obviously is not his because he died before they could do the video, but Tommy's live on the video. They filmed him and then they pieced together pieces of Bobby to make his side of the video. And it's his last recording. This is his voice in December. He died in April. That's one thing. He never lost his voice. People say, oh my God, he's doing so well. His voice sounds great. I said, yeah, if the voice starts to go, I'm going to send him back for more surgery. It agrees with him. Because we didn't know if he could sing again. I mean, he was intubated for over 20 hours with the transplant. So we didn't know if he would still be able to sing. But he did a full rehearsal and in September. And although he didn't have the power yet, the voice was still there. He just had to build up his strength. So he had his voice up, but he went out on top. He really went out on top. His voice never went. So he didn't have to stop singing to retire.
Yes.
He died.
How do we help you to keep the legacy alive? What are some practical ways we people who are watching, Ziggy, me, anyone we know can help keep Bobby's legendary career alive, his memory?
Well, I'm hoping to get this CD, well, not a CD, but this recording, and there'll be, I think there's 2 or 3 more. I don't know since they only did the one shot for the vocals, I don't know if they can do videos because it depends on what they can find from clips on the YouTube and stuff. But I want to be able to push this, that this is Bobby's last recordings before he died. And his voice sounds great. Sounds great. And you'd never think that he'd be dead in 120 days.
Let's
But
go
that's
back.
good. I'm glad that he died quick.
Yes, absolutely. What a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Ziggy, before I wrap this up, Ziggy, do you have anything to add or ask? I don't want to leave you totally in the dark.
It's okay. I was just wondering when he was with the Golden Boys, like you have three great singers, three egos. How did they all get along? How was it? How was that all? How did that,
I mean, I wasn't there for all of it. I mean, they had their arguments and their disagreements, but basically they got along. I mean, the show went from 85 till now. I mean, how long is that? 95, 2005, 15. I mean,
37
over,
years.
yeah, I mean, and they still, now, of course, when Bobby was sick, they would get a fill in. If Frankie had something to do, they would get a fill in. If Fabian had something to do, but basically it was the three of them most of the time. They didn't do fill-ins very often. And the people came to the show. I mean, I'm sure they got the same people every year as they went around to the regular venues that they went to. The same people came, maybe some new add-ons, but people, they loved the show. It worked. It worked. And they loved it. The people loved it. I don't know
where did Bobby get his voice? Was his dad musically inclined? His mother?
No.
It was just a gift from God.
I know his mother's father, I think I got this right. His mother's father played the accordion, but I don't know if he was a singer. As far as I know, there's no musical talent in the family that they knew of. I mean, maybe people had good voices, but they never used them. And Bobby was a ham. He came alive on stage. He was much more quiet at home than he was out in public. I mean, he never, ever turned a fan down. If they wanted a picture or an autograph, I don't know how they would do it, but he would come home and people would be waiting for him at the airport. I don't know how they knew how he was landing. And I don't know whether they just figured where he went and approximately what flight he'd be home. We came home from Mexico. This was not on the web. We were on vacation and we were in the international terminal and we came out and there were two guys standing with albums, stacked of albums. I said, what the hell? How do you guys find this stuff out? So Bobby would, he signed everything until our ride came to pick us up. I don't know. He never refused. He always, I have seen some people, some stars that a fan will come up and they're not this age group. They're not mobbing you. They're not grabbing your clothes. They come up, oh, can I get an autograph? Too busy right now. And they walk away. Nobody else is around. It's not like there's 20, 30 people. And I think, does it take that much? 5 minutes of your time, not even to just sign something?
Yes.
Bobby wasn't like that.
Back to you. Here's a question for you. Has anybody ever told you whose celebrity voice you have?
Me? No.
Suzanne Plachette.
Oh, yeah, I know my voice is deep because people would call on the phone. They'd say, Bobby. I'd say, no, Linda, let me get him. Because I know I have a deep voice. I didn't even think of her.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Absolutely. Well, so when you have anything regarding keeping his legacy alive, will you let me know so that I can get it out to my people? And
sure, I'll send you an email with a link and say, here, you can post this. But you can go on and listen to that, to this recording. It's under, it might be under Bobby Rydell. I haven't even looked for it myself. It might be under Bobby Rydell, but it's definitely look under the voice of tribute.
okay.
The voice of tribute. That's his Facebook page. It's probably on there. That's the kid that did the duet with him, Tommy C.
Great. I'll look that up. So in America, did he have a favorite venue?
Let me think.
I know he's at South Point a lot, so I was hoping it was that.
He was scheduled to be at South Point in September. Um, well, not so much the favorite, but there were a lot of, like, he would come home and say, "Oh, what a shithole that was," and I'd say, "Oh well, you know, that'll happen," because sometimes it's like it's disaster. The dressing rooms, it's just a disaster. And you don't know till you get there. I forget where it was, but he came home. He said, "I'm never going to that place again. This was a disaster." But I don't remember where it was.
It's probably better.
Right. I mean, even he couldn't remember. He lived his life. I'd say, "Well, what was it like when you went to Korea or France or wherever?" Because he traveled all over the world, especially when he was younger. He'd talk about the food. He could tell you, "Oh, I was in Korea and we were at this restaurant and we had such and such a thing. And I can't remember what I ate yesterday." And he's telling me what he ate 30 years ago. He loved, he should have weighed 300 pounds. He loved to eat.
What was his favorite meal?
His favorite meal was oysters Kilpatrick in Australia. They don't make them here. They make them over there. Because when we went there, he kept saying, "You have to try them. You have to try them." And I don't like raw oysters. Well, these aren't raw, thank God. And they are delicious. And then he said, "Oh, you got to try kangaroo. So I tried some kangaroo and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm eating Skippy." Remember the cartoon Skippy? But it's good. It is good meat. But he loved oysters Kilpatrick. And there's another one called, I think it's oysters Mornay, which is done a little bit different. But they're cooked. They're kind of broiled on I forget the salamander it's called. It's some sort of a broiling thing. That's his favorite. He would talk about that. And he would ask in restaurants, "Do you make oysters Kilpatrick?" They didn't know what he was talking about because they only make it in Australia. They don't make it in the States. That was his favorite.
What's your favorite meal?
Surf and turf.
Ooh.
I could never be a vegetarian. Never.
Did he do any?
I mean, not that I have to eat meat all the time, but I like a good steak.
Did he do anything special to keep his voice in shape, or was it just naturally great all the time?
He smoked. I mean, he didn't do anything. He didn't go to rehearsal. The only time he went to rehearsal is if he had a song that he had a chart written and he wanted to sing it for the first time. But he only would go to that one rehearsal. Once he did it once, that was it. He never went to rehearsals anymore. He never did it. What he did before a show when he was getting ready to go to the venue. And the first time I heard him do this, I thought he was having some sort of a seizure. We were dating and he was a local show and I was using one shower in the upper level and he was in the lower level and he's in the shower and he's going through the scales. But now he's really loud. Now I don't know what he's doing because I'm pretty far away, but I hear this. I'm thinking, "Oh my God, what the hell's happening?" I run out of the shower. I burst into the bathroom. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, I'm opening up my throat, getting my cords. Only from the steam in the shower. That's all he did. I mean, he didn't do anything special. Like he didn't have any routines or anything that he did.
Hilarious. You make me laugh. It's just hilarious the way you deliver your timing and your pauses, that you have effective pauses and you have short little
Maybe I should think of a second career.
You should. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been Ziggy, do you have something to add?
I was just going to say, I think everybody loved him because he was like an everyman.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
we could all relate to him, and it was great. Like he wasn't, out of our reach. Like we felt we could touch him, and he was like us, and that was a beautiful quality that he had.
Well, when people, like a lot of times you'll see people, they'll say, "Oh, Mr. Anka or Mr. Sinatra or whatever." They always just missed Bobby. They'd walk if they saw him we were in a restaurant. People, they'd be 2 tables away. "Hey, Bob, how you doing? How about those Eagles?" They would never have done that to Frank Sinatra ever. "Hey, Frank, what do you think think about the New York Giants? Nobody would have done that. People just felt that they knew Bobby, like he was their neighbor or the
Mhm.
guy down the street. And I'd be pushing him because he had a hard time walking. He had bad knees. So we'd go to doctor's appointments. These people didn't know who he was in the elevator, but he'd have his Eagles cap on. I'd be pushing him in the wheelchair. And men, they start talking sports. They didn't know they were talking to Bobby Rydell, but they'd start in the ride up to the 4th floor where they'd talk football in the ride up. They didn't know it was Bobby Rydell. But even if they did, they interacted with him the same way. The people, hey, Bob, how about those Phillies? Or how about those Flyers or whatever? Yeah. We'd be in the car someplace and maybe somebody recognized him and he'd be riding shotgun in my car and they'd say, hey, Bob, how you doing? It was, he was very approachable, a very approachable person compared to some people where they give off this, they almost have like an invisible bubble around them. They know, well, there's a technique too. You don't make eye contact because I've watched them. They don't make eye contact with people. They can walk through a crowd and they just look straight ahead. They don't make any, because if you make eye contact, the person might stop you. So they keep focused and they just walk right through the crowd and blow everybody off. Bobby couldn't do that. He couldn't do that because he'd say to me, now hurry up, go pretty fast with the wheelchair. I'd say, well, what are we in a race? I mean, I'm the one who's pushing the chair, so I can only go so fast. And because sometimes if he didn't feel like talking to getting mobbed, he wanted to get through the crowd quickly. Well, sometimes I couldn't do it. And he would, but he never let the fans know that he wanted to hurry up. He would, hi, how are you? Yes, take a picture. Sure. Hun, okay, stand here. And then that's when I would say to them, give me the camera. No, they'd always say to me, go on, I said, you don't want me. Give me the camera. I'll take your picture with him. Because they don't want me. They want him. But he was very accommodating to his fans. And he was known for that. That's one of the things he was known for being so easygoing and approachable, where some of them aren't. I mean, even though I've met them, some of them aren't approachable. I wouldn't even approach them and be like, just hi. Because some people are they put off that air and you don't want to feel like you're an imposition. I mean, not that I don't collect autographs. I don't take pictures. I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Because to me, okay, you get a picture. That doesn't mean you know the person. One time, where were we? I forget where we were, but this woman comes up and she's got this picture. She goes, Bob, you remember this picture? The only reason he remembered is he remembered the wallpaper on this club in Philadelphia. He goes, oh, that was it taken at Sciola's. And she said, yeah, do you remember that night? He goes, no, I don't remember that night. I remember the wallpaper. She got so upset. And then another time we were in Wildwood at this restaurant. There's a whole bunch of people. And of course, they're all Philadelphia people. And we were at a table with maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 people. And this girl, well, she wasn't a girl. She was maybe in her 40s or 50s, but she comes running over. She goes, Bobby, do you remember you were teaching me how to swim when he was in Wildwood when he was young? Rather than go to the beach and be mobbed, he would go to a friend's motel where there was a pool so he could just relax. Well, this is where she ran into him. And I guess he was teaching her how to swim. Now, she was a kid. And you were teaching me how to swim in the suntan motel's pool. And do you remember that? And he went, no, I don't. She got so angry. She stormed away from the table. She was at her table. I can't believe. I said, you should have just said you remembered, Bobby. Who cares? Just say you remember. He goes, I didn't remember. But see, in their mind, that was a big moment. It was one of thousands in his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My God.
But
What do you think that if Bobby had one thing that he'd wanted to still say, what do you think that might be? Maybe to his fans or the military or people in entertainment.
He was extremely proud of his military service and going over there and entertaining. And when I would say to him, I'd say, how are you so tolerant with the fans? Because I'd get to a point and be like, oh my God, like, let's get going. And he'd say, Linda, that I'm where I am because of them. So that's why, I mean, and I get it, but you know, after a while it gets frustrating because you want to get back to the room or you want to get to the restaurant and they don't realize, but he loved his fans. I mean, he really appreciated his fans. He really, really did. Not so much, I wouldn't say that much with people that in the business that he, well, besides Sinatra, his fans. I mean, he loved his fans. They were always number one. I mean, I thought once we moved from the house he lived in since he was 21 that we wouldn't get mail at the house. We had a post office box. As soon as we moved to this new address, we started getting stuff from the fans right at the house. I would get a box. There'd be 4 or 5 album sleeves with a note. Can you please sign these? So I'd get them to sign. As long as they had the postage, I would send it back. In fact, one came the day he died, and I wrote a note. So sorry, Mr. Rydell died. We can't give you the signature. I sent it back.
Wow.
They just felt that I mean, with the internet now, I mean, I'm surprised they don't know when you go to the bathroom. I mean, that's how much information is out there. But they know your address, they know your phone number. It's unbelievable. But yeah, personal stuff would come from fans to be signed. Baseballs, microphones. I don't know what they do with them. I guess they sell some of them, but he always signed them. In fact, the day before he went in the hospital, April 1st, March 30th, he was in the rehab, you know, for physical therapy and everything. I took some stuff over that day for him to sign that came in the mail. And then the next day he went to the hospital. But his fans loved him and he loved his fans. And what more can you ask? I mean, in the end, doesn't matter how much money you made and how many awards you got. If your fans don't say nice things about you, then it's a waste.
Absolutely. I
His
would
fans
imagine.
were blown away. They were blown away when he died because the billboards were up on the Atlantic City Expressway. Tickets were sold because it wasn't like he'd been sick for months and months and months. He was there, then he was gone, which
Was
is
it a
really
shock?
better that way.
Was it a shock for you, or you kind of knew it was going to happen?
It was a shock. Let me put it this way. He went in the hospital Friday. And by Friday night, I'm reading his chart. You know, you can get onto the chart through your phone. Yeah, you can access the patient charts now. And I'm looking at his chart and I thought, okay, this doesn't look real good, but there's still he could make it through this. I knew by Saturday that this was not going to be good. I didn't know he was going to die that quickly, but I knew that if he survived, it was going to be a tough comeback because I'm looking at his blood work. I'm reading the blood work. I'm reading the chest x-rays. I'm reading all the studies that they're doing. And I know what everything means. So, but yeah, it was kind of a surprise. I had a 3-day lead time. So it was kind of
You don't seem like the type to have anything that you hold back. So was there anything that you didn't get to say to him?
No.
That's a
I
beautiful
said
thing.
that morning, when I got there that morning, he said to me, they took him to one hospital and they were going to transfer him to a different hospital. So he was on the gurney. And I went to the first hospital and I said to him, Bobby, what the hell happened? I'd just been with him the night before. He goes, I'm not going to make it out of this one, Linda. I said, now, why do you say that? You've never said that. With all the crap you've been through, you've never said that. And he goes, just the way I feel, I don't think I'm going to make it.
Wow.
And then he got quiet and he looked me dead in the face and he went, I'm tired. And I said to him, I get it. I mean, it was 10 years. He was, you know, one thing after another, he'd get better. And then something else would happen. Then he'd fight his way back, get back on stage. Things would go good for 5 or 6 months, and something else would happen. So, I mean, he kind of knew. And I've seen that with patients before. They know, they kind of know. He never said that before, ever. In all the things that he went through, he never, ever said anything like that. So hey, it's his body. I'm not going to argue with him. If he's feeling that way, then he wouldn't have said it if he didn't feel it.
Mm.
So in
So
terms of children and grandchildren, where I forget the details.
he's got a son and a daughter. They both live in the same town in South Jersey. The son is divorced and has 3 kids. Well, they're not kids. They're 21, 24, and 30. And the daughter is married and she lives about a mile from the son. She has a son, a freshman in college, and a daughter who just turned 16 last week. So I'll be with them Christmas Eve,
Oh, that's great.
driving down there. And then I was hoping to I was going to stay home alone in my pajamas on Christmas Day, which is what we usually did. But my neighbors, I don't have to go far. I just have to go out the front door and cross the grass to their front door. So I'm going there for Christmas Day.
What do your neighbors think about having lived by Bobby Rydell? And how's the relationship with all the neighbors? I got to hear that before you get off.
It's a small community. It's not big. It's just, I think there's 50 townhomes, one way in and out. And because I was outside more, I got to know a lot of the neighbors, not more so than him. But after he died, I was outside installing an override cable in the garage. It's a cable you put in that if the power's out, you can get in the garage. So I'm
You
up
were
on the ladder.
installing it? You were
Yeah.
installing it? Wow.
I was up there. I had my drill and I'm putting this thing in, and this little old guy pulls up. He doesn't pull in my driveway. He pulls up right at the driveway. And I'm thinking, who's this? I don't know him. He walks up and he said, were you married to Bobby Rydell? And I said, yes. And he said, I knew he lived around here. I didn't know he lived in here. And I said, yeah. I said, we moved in, I guess it was 3 years in August. And, oh, I always liked him. It's a shame I didn't know that he lived here. I'm thinking, oh, why would you stop by for coffee? So then he said, you're the third widow in here this year. I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. And he said, I'm 87 and my wife is 84. I said, you better watch out. You may be the next one to go and your wife will be a widow. And he's real tiny. I'm only 5 feet tall. So he was about my height. And then he goes, well, nice meeting you. And he gets back in his car. And I'm thinking to myself, now that wouldn't have happened if Bobby's name was Joe Blow. Nobody's going to stop by and say, are you Joe Blow's wife? They would have just kept driving. But it's just funny how people are. But no, nobody made a big deal out of it, because Bobby wasn't that way. I mean, he didn't make a big deal out of it. And I am very low key. I never even used his name. I don't use his name.
No,
I
you
never
don't.
used Rydell, and I never used Rydell. Because Rydell's was his stage name. Rydell was his first wife had Rydell. And before we got married, I was still working. One of the doctors I worked with, she said a drug rep was in the office and she said, oh, tell him who you're getting married to. I went, no. She said, she's marrying Bobby Rydell. He goes, oh, you must be Jennifer Rydell's mother. I said, no, I'm the second wife. Her mom died 5 years ago. And I thought, I don't want that to happen. So I kept my own name. Bobby said, you don't want my name? I said, well, mine's easier to spell and I like my name better. But plus I didn't want people befriending me because of who I was married to.
Absolutely.
I didn't tell people. When I would go places, I would just use my name. And sometimes they didn't know for months that I was married to Bobby. They'd find out, like, maybe I'd be in a store and somebody'd say, oh my God, I was at the show Saturday night. You did a great job. And then, who are you married to? Because I didn't want people to know. I just didn't. I like flying under the radar. That way I don't have, nobody's trying to get tickets or trying to get something. Because you know how it is.
Yes.
There's people that glom onto you and they won't let you go. And I had my first experience with that before we were just married, maybe 6 months. And we went to, he had a show in the Poconos and I was with a priest. Bobby always had to take a nap. His beauty sleep. So he would take a nap before the show. So I went with this priest to dinner. So of course, everybody knew the priest. So we're walking by and they're, hey, Father. And this is Linda Hoffman. Oh, hello. And then as we're leaving this one table, I don't even know what made him say it, or somebody asked him something. He goes, oh, well, this is Bobby's wife. This is Bobby's wife, Linda. All of a sudden, the whole table was like, oh, wait. And I thought, forget it. You blew it. I mean, you can't say hello to me when I'm Linda Hoffman, but now it's okay that I'm Linda, Bobby's wife. No. So I kept it on the low key. I never used it.
That's beautiful. You got a real picture of what people are like.
Well, I was 55 when I married him. I wasn't a kid. You know, I had lived a life. It's yeah, people are funny like that. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean, what can I do for them? I can't do anything. I'm not connected. He was connected, but they think they want to be able to drop a name or whatever. You know.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I never got into that. I just couldn't be bothered.
Do you think that here's my last question. Do you think Bobby became more grounded once being with you, or stayed more grounded because of being with you?
Oh, he became more grounded.
That's beautiful to know.
Because you know, I didn't treat him like a star. He was my husband. He wasn't a star to me. I wasn't even a fan. I would have never bought tickets to go see him. I mean, not that I was against him, but he just wasn't on my radar. I wasn't a fan
I
at
love
all.
this.
Because
This
he would tell
is
people.
so true and so
He wasn't
hilarious.
a fan. She wouldn't have come to see me. She didn't even know really and I didn't know what songs he did. I had to look them up. I mean, I had to look on the computer. I couldn't reel off what his songs were. In fact, I didn't
That's
know.
amazing. Like Ziggy said earlier, I bet you that was a real draw for him, that you weren't all taken aback by him.
Well, when we were dating, I forget where we were, maybe at my house. And I don't know, he was trying to be Mr. I said, look, if you want to get to know me as Linda Hoffman, and I get to know you as Robert Rydell, that's fine. But I'm not a stargazer, so don't even go down that road. I could care less. All it tells me is what you do to earn money to pay your bills. Doesn't tell me what kind of person you are. You could be a real asshole. I don't know yet whether you are or you aren't, but. And he was like, oh, like, I don't know whether I guess nobody ever said that to him before, but at 55, come on. When he was in the hospital, I wasn't sure whether he was still like coherent. And I woke him up and I said, Bobby, do you know who I am? And he went like this. Of course I know who you are. You're my wife, Linda Hoffman. I said, okay. I just want to make sure you're still with the program. Because, you know, he was so short of breath and he would drift off and fall asleep. I didn't know whether he was with me or not with me. But he was still, you know, he was with it. It's just that he didn't have a lot of air. You need air to be able to talk. You have to be able to breathe. And he really couldn't talk much. But it got riled up. Of course I know who you are.
I went on BobbyRydell.com today, and I see you have merchandise on there. So people can support you by buying merchandise.
But we still have the book. They won't be autographed, but I still have books and coffee mugs and CDs and what else? Pictures, stuff like that. Of course, here's a funny one for you. A lady, she wants to order a book, and she called the personal assistant, and we had taken it that you couldn't get the personalized. She called up. She goes, I don't know why I can't get the book personalized. She said, ma'am, Mr. Rydell died. Are these people that stupid? She couldn't get it through her head why the book couldn't be personalized. I said, oh my God. And these people have jobs. You know, what do they do? I don't know. But yeah, and she got really irate. Like, I don't understand. I said to her, why don't you just say he's dead? He can't sign it for you. It's unbelievable.
Jeez. You've been such a delight. Is there anything you want to say as we close out, Linda?
No, it's hard, but let me put it to you this way. I'd rather it went the way it went than have him alive, but not living. If there's a big difference of being alive and living. I mean, he lived to be on stage, and if he couldn't be on stage, forget it. He would, oh, and I don't even want to know what my life would be like. He would have been miserable because during COVID, they weren't performing. And I guess, I don't know, I'm not, a singer or an artist, but because he hadn't been singing in a while, he was irritable. I guess it's like a painter who doesn't paint or a sculptor who hasn't sculpted. I'd say, I can't wait for you to go back to work. You're driving me crazy, because he would be real short tempered. I guess there was no outlet for his. So that's when I was setting up all these Zoom calls. I'd take everything that came in on the email. He said, what am I doing this for? No, we aren't even entertaining. I said, this will keep your name out there. You're doing it. And I would make the schedule, set everything up. All you have to do is sit down at the kitchen table, and then I'd hook them up to the earpieces or whatever. And then, I'd leave the room. I was always home because I was afraid he wouldn't be able to do it. Sometimes I would leave halfway through because that was working. But yeah, it was like he needed that, I guess, the applause, or not even the applause from the audience, but just the being on stage. I don't know. I've never been on stage, so I don't know what that feeling's like. And not that I want to be, but that fed him. It fed him. And it would have been sad to watch him.
And he fed so many.
I'm sorry, say it again.
He fed so many people for so many decades.
Yep. And
what a legacy.
I mean, I got things from Finland, Korea, Norway, Israel, Russia. I don't know what they say. I don't know. I mean, I know a couple Russian people, but I don't know these people to do interpretations to tell me what it says, cards or emails or messages. So I would just write back in English, thank you. I mean, what do you say? I mean, I don't know what to say, but I did not think, I thought I would get 24-hour reprieve before it hit the airwaves. No. I mean, I didn't get an hour. I don't even know how it got on Facebook. I don't know how. It was on the 5 o'clock news. I don't know how they got the word, of course, once you're a celebrity, HIPAA goes out the window. As far as they may know they don't know what you're in the hospital for, but they know you're there. But yeah, it was, I turned all the phones off. I just turned everything off because it was driving me out of my mind. I mean, how many times can you tell the story?
I know. You seem to have gotten through the worst of the grief. It seems
I
like
have my moments, but when I do get upset, I just reflect back. Listen, I could have buried him 10 years ago if he didn't get those transplants. He would have been dead within a month if he didn't get the transplants. So, and I remember lying in bed before he got listed and before he got them, thinking, oh my God, he could be dead in 2 months. Do I want to stay here? Meaning in Philadelphia? Do I want to move back north? I'll have to sell this house. I mean, these things go through your head when you're looking at somebody who's dying in front of you. And then I'd say, well, I can't do anything. I just got to wait and see what happens. And then I'd put it out of my mind. But at that point, we were only married 3 years. And then, like I told his one grandson, I forget what he said to me. My response was, yeah, I squeezed 10 more years out of him after the transplants. And they were good years. I mean, they weren't just being alive. He was performing. He was doing things. Back on stage, he went to Australia twice. We went to Hawaii. And I remember I called the doctor at the hospital. And I said to him, listen, I worked in medicine all my life, and I know what you're thinking. You're looking at that guy, and you're thinking, oh boy, this 79-year-old guy, he's a wreck. Looking at his chart. And I said, I want you to know something. The man you're looking at was on stage performing in front of 3,500 people 3 weeks ago. And I want to treat him accordingly. He's not the wreck that you probably think he is, just based on his chart. Because I know you don't know anything about a patient. You walk in, you see how they look, you look at their chart. You don't know if they have a husband or wife, 2 kids, 10 kids. You don't know anything about them. So I wanted him to make sure that he knew this was not just the chart. This was a person that was a viable human being that had been performing. I said, he flew to Boston by himself 3 weeks ago. So don't treat him like an invalid or a frail old man. Do everything.
That's
And he
really
like,
You were very
important.
lucky to,
pardon me?
yeah, you were very lucky to, you were very lucky to have each other.
Oh, I was his advocate. And I said to the doctor, I said, I know, because I've been in your position. Not that you mean to do it, but how else are you going to find it? You can't do a whole personal inventory every time you meet a patient. You'd never get anything done. But I wanted them to know that this guy was not the wreck he appeared to be. Because if you look at his chart, it was like this thick. I mean, liver, kidney, heart, broken arm, broken leg. I mean, all these things. But I was his advocate. And I said to the doctor, what the hell did I say to him? I was not nice either. I forget what I said. This is the doctor the night before he died. And I said to him, and I'm on his chest like this, poking him on the lapel. I said, I don't want any more poking and prodding. You know, and I know he's on a one-way ride. And he was like, looking at me. I said, you're not fooling me. You're not, I know what's going on. And he's like, okay. I mean, do what you can, but no, you're not going to experiment. You're not going to keep sticking things and whatever. I know the game. So no, he would have been very unhappy and would have made my life miserable if I went through hoops to make him survive and not live. I mean, we both talked about it. I mean, I had my funeral planned and paid for years. And I'd say to my girlfriends, if I drop dead, don't feel bad. I'd rather have people say, what do you mean dead? I just saw her a week ago. She was fine. Then, well, it's a blessing. Or the worst is when they have a viewing. Oh my, they did a good job, didn't they? She looks wonderful. In other words, she didn't look that good when she was alive, but she looks pretty good now. I don't want that. But so, no, it's good. It's good. I'm okay with it. I mean, I have my moments, but I mean, really, he lived a good life. He lived 3 weeks shy of 80 with a lot of issues. It wasn't like he had this great healthy life. And then he had many surgeries before I met him. I used to tell the doctors, oh, that's BMT before my time. Like there were other things that I didn't know about. I would tell them, but I say, I don't know the details. It was BMT before my time. He lived a good life, productive. He enjoyed it. And he wasn't in pain. I mean, he had sore knees, he had bad knees, but he lived a good life. I mean, how much more could I squeeze out of him? And I think he was ready too, by his attitude. I think it was just like, you know what? I'm done. Which I think you get to that point after you've been not sickly, but had so many things over a long period of time, 10 years. That's a lot.
Absolutely. Well, we sure appreciate you coming on here and sharing from your heart. Ziggy, any last comment?
It was a pleasure meeting you, Linda. I didn't know anything about you, and I feel like I really got to know you and Bobby. Thank you for sharing so much. It was really
Well, it's
nice meeting you.
meeting you.
You've been such a delight. I appreciate you, and so many times people mention Bobby, but now they're getting a glimpse of why Bobby was so wonderful. So I hope that's the takeaway from today. Because I
hope so. I hope his fans. I hope his fans remember him as a nice guy. Like I say to people, he was an average guy who happened to have a great voice. The voice came later. He was a nice guy. Oh, he had his moments. Important. He would lose his temper just like everybody else, but he had a very kind soul. I mean, he'd be watching, those commercials for the ASPCA, where they like a 3-minute commercial with the dogs with the tear, their eyes are down to here and they're dirty. I'd come in the room and he'd be tears. And I'd say, what are you crying about? He goes, oh, these commercials. I said, well, then turn it off. Don't watch it. Why do you subject yourself to it? I don't like him either, but I just changed the channel. He'd be crying. I mean, he'd cry at Disney movies. And I'm not that, he'd say to me, you never call me honey. You never call me sweetie. I said, I don't call anybody those names, so don't feel bad. I'm just not that way. where he was more hun,
Oh,
hey sweets. It was Bobby or Bob. I don't use those kind of words. And he would get mad at me sometimes. One time he said, "You didn't even say God bless you when I sneezed." I said, "You sneezed 3 times. How many times do you want me to say it? You only get one." He'd get all upset. And I'd start to laugh at him. I'd say, "You're too sensitive. You gotta buck up."
oh, what a delight you are. I hope we stay in contact. Anytime you want to come on and promote anything, we'll share it. I know Ziggy will. We've got friends in high places that'll share it for us too.
All right, I'll send you when I get more of this stuff with the songs that are being released.
Perfect.
You
I'll
Thanks.
go,
can put them out.
I'll go on the website and buy some merchandise on the 1st of the month. I'll put it
Okay.
out.
I'm
Absolutely.
gonna check it now. I'm gonna go check the roster to see what came in the orders.
Perfect. Can you get it autographed?
Oh, sorry. I said, I should have had a stamp made. I should have just had a stamp made for these stupid people. Okay, you think you are? Okay, I'll stamp it.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Linda Hoffman.
All right. Nice
Bye.
meeting both of you. Bye-bye.
Love you.
Bye.
Happy holidays to all of
Happy
your family.
you.
holidays.
Bye-bye.